Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Wealth Preservation Podcast. We are back at the MUN Cellar, thankfully, because I love good beer, and this is where you get it. We have Andy and Lou again. We're going to be going over a little bit more on basically just how the CPA consulting world and the entrepreneurial world combine together.
Yeah. If you didn't listen to our last episode with Andy Klein and Lou Catalano, you want to kind of hear their entrepreneurial journeys and their stories about how they got to where they're at today. Go back, listen to the last episode, get up to speed on that, and then we're going to get into a little more nitty-gritty, nerdier topics on today's podcast of really, again, like how that CPA and business owner relationship works, and then, kind of some of those things that you need to dive into to make your business run more efficiently. So we're excited. We'll kick into this episode. Andy, we'll start with you. Kind of gave us your bio last time, but can you just give us kind of that brief, maybe the 2-minute version bio of kind of how you got to where we're at today, where we're sitting at MUN Cellar drinking these amazing brews. And
he just came in the back door.
Yeah.
He saw there was beer. And
he's like, I can do this.
He's been here ever since.
Help on a sign. Started Sacramento Brewing Company in 1995, going on my 24th year in the industry.
Okay.
Always wanted to open my own place. Always wanted a kind of a Belgian European look and feel about it, and grew up in Roseville and wanted to do it here in downtown Roseville.
Very cool. For those of you that are on the video, we're going to do some B-roll here around it. The place is amazing. It's gorgeous. It does feel like you're in a German or Belgian style brew house back in the old country, as I guess they say. So come down here. The other thing you mentioned last time, there's no TVs here, which is very, very cool. And I'm oblivious. I didn't notice that, but it makes sense why there is no. And that you kind of create that cool community space where people can actually come and. Now I guess they have their phones, but hopefully they're going to talk and actually have a conversation and discuss something while they're enjoying great food and great beer.
Yeah.
So very cool. Lou, kind of give us your kind of that 2-minute bio of kind of how you got to be the kick-ass CPA that you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always had an interest in kind of business finance, so that's what I went to school for. And midway through, I decided the CPA track really made a lot of sense for me. I really enjoy what I get to do now, working with small and mid-sized business owners, and hoping to, come alongside them, add some value, add some peace of mind to what they're doing. It's very complex, the tax code and just accounting in general can be daunting and complex. So I really enjoy that. Right out of college, unfortunately, I went and worked for the enemy for a little while. I was an IRS agent, worked for the federal government, auditing small businesses.
You're probably on a lot of hit lists.
Probably. I'm actually a little nervous. This isn't going on the internet, is it?
Lou Catalano.
I don't want to be searchable.
No, as they put on the lipstick.
We don't believe in marketing on the internet.
It's a fad.
Totally stuck. Yeah, that fad's going to die.
The whole craft brew thing is probably a year or two tops and it's out of here. Yeah.
So anyway, that IRS, not my favorite position, but it was a great experience for what I do now. Done a little bit of consulting along the way, and I've been in public accounting now, doing this for a while. Fortunate to get to work with great clients, small and mid-sized business owners, a lot of breweries, restaurants, and pretty wide range in the area where we live. There's a lot of small businesses, so it's fun to get to work with them.
Very cool. So for our listeners, we always say that this podcast is really for business owners, the entrepreneurs, and the advisors that serve them, because we just feel like there's this huge void in the space of advice. You have the tiny small business owner who are the kind of little mom and pop shop. And then you have this great advice for the 50 to 60 million business owners. But that middle space, they kind of outgrow your group of advisors, and you kind of need that next level. You really need to bring in the hot shot, badass CPA. You kind of need to up your game in lots of areas, and you just don't get that advice at that super small level. So that's kind of that niche that we work in for those business owners that are really trying to. It's kind of a cliche term, but get to the next level. I guess because we're always trying to do that. But you're trying to really, grow that business from that small, maybe $500,000 to $1 million business to that $3 to $5 to $10 million business where you're really doing a ton of revenue and you're adding, multiple lines of business and things like that. How do you get there? Because a lot of those small businesses miss a lot of those opportunities because they're doing TurboTax, they're doing some of these other, ways that they do it. They're trying to do it themselves because they're trying to save money to keep the business afloat, and they don't have that really good breadth of advice yet. So that's really what this podcast is for, and what we're trying to really put out to the business community is that there really is that next level of advice that's it might seem like it's either expensive or time consuming, but it's really going to save you a lot of money in the long run. And we'll kind of talk about that today.
Yeah. And so to kind of intro you getting connected with Lou, there's this, concept of like, oh, I work with a CPA versus like, no, I work with my CPA. Like this is the guy that, he's in it for me. I'm in it for him. Like we're working together versus just someone who, you email twice a year, 4 times a year, whatever. Right. So what was kind of the catalyst to like you switching from like, hey, I was working with a CPA, and then I knew I have to go out and find my CPA that's going to, really, to borrow the phrase, take me to the next level and push Monk Cellar, up a notch?
Yeah, for me, it was, we're in, say, year 3.5, and, I'm looking at my financials, and I know intuitively that I'm kind of spending more money on labor or food costs. Things are kind of creeping up, but really at that point, working with a CPA was someone who pretty much just did our taxes.
Right.
And I really wanted more of a kind of partner and someone to bounce ideas off and be able to look at my numbers and be able to make good decisions based on those numbers. So I had worked with Lou through the California Craft Brewers Association and our local Sacramento Brewers Guild, and really just kind of reached out to him and just wanted to get his thoughts on kind of where I was and what I needed to do. Because, when you're running a small business, you are everything from the janitor to the CEO, and you don't always have time to really scrub your books and look at your numbers. And so for me, it was just important to, one, just have kind of a quick dashboard that I could look at and make decisions from there. And Lou was, it was great to have him.
And I think that 3-year mark is kind of interesting because, being around lots of business owners and have run them myself, is you kind of that first 2 years, you're just like, ooh, you kind of have this tight, like I'm checking everything. And by kind of year 3, you're like, oh, wow, we're making it, I'm paying the bills. And life kind of happens in between there, right? You have kids and family. And so some of that stuff kind of starts, not purposely, but it kind of starts to slip a little bit because you're just, you're like, oh, hey, we're successful, we're making money. And the costs creep up and like, we're making enough money. So I don't have to watch that as tightly. And then before you know it, you're kind of, oh no, why did my costs go from 10 to 16%? Or why did this used to be a great source of revenue and it's only, it's not what it is. Mm-hmm. So why do you kind of think that kind of happens? Is that just because life happens, or is that just, is there another reason for that, do you think?
Yeah, I think life certainly happens. I think that, a certain amount of complacency, like you said, you're open, you're paying your bills, and, but when you think of restaurants, particularly my business, margins are so slim, and it doesn't take a whole lot of movement one way or the other to really start seeing your numbers go the wrong direction. And we really started seeing kind of in that mid 2017 is when I kind of noticed something was up. So, having a CPA that can look at your numbers and really just making sure your books are in order and at least coded and giving you quick access to some of those key numbers is hugely important.
Yeah. And Lou, you work with a couple breweries. Yeah. So, I mean, this,
they're not as good, by the way.
Not as good, obviously. Not.
I work with one brew. I have one client.
The best client.
Yeah.
So you work with a couple. Breweries, and there are some things that every brewery is different, but there are some things that you can't systematize. What were some of the things that when you guys got paired up, it was like, hey, these are the things, and these are the things that are I guess kind of the common inefficiencies that you see other breweries have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before even that, let's just take a step back a minute. And, for all of our brewery clients that we bring in, and really clients from all industries, one of the most important things is that we're sitting down with them throughout the year and looking at their books. Yeah. Some of that is just forcing him to get out from behind the bar or behind the mash tun and come and sit and let's look at this. And Andy did a pretty good job with that. But, there are people who really, they're running by the seat of their pants. And so, just taking that time to come and sit down and then have somebody who's got experience looking at those numbers, doing some tax projections and tax planning and also just financial planning, I think is really important. You guys talk about that kind of that growth of a small business. Yeah. And then at a certain point, they realize we need a little bit more. We view that very much as like we're de facto the board of advisors for our clients. And that includes us. And there are other professionals, you guys, attorneys, bank, there's a lot of people that go into that. But as a small business owner, like you said, you're the janitor to the CEO, you're kind of out on an island trying to make decisions or just project into the future or whatever. And so, making that de facto board of directors that can kind of come around and help make some of those decisions is important. Specific to breweries, I think it's vital that we associate revenue stream with cost center, right? Gotcha. So oftentimes a brewery will have, this is our labor cost. But Andy could talk about here. You've got a brewery, you've got a restaurant, you've got a bar, you've got your back of the house, the front of the house, all that. What we want to do is be able to associate those costs with both coding them correctly and then also the timing, because there can be timing issues.
When you say coding, just for the listeners, when you say coding, what does that kind of mean?
Just putting it on the right spot on your financials, on the profit and loss. There are different ways you can do that. We don't like to come in and make everybody make wholesale changes to their books, because then it's confusing. It's a learning curve. You don't need one more thing. You don't need to make it. I like to simplify, not add complexity, but just making sure that we've got those lined up, because then we can start tracking some of those key numbers. And make sure that we're trending in the right direction in specific areas, or identify that hey, did you know you're not making any money on the guest beer you're bringing in? You need to bump the price, or you need to renegotiate, or just lose it. You know what I mean? So being able to make those kind of decisions, unless you have really clean financials, and they don't have to be perfect, but unless you have somebody who's looking at them with you, you don't know, so you can't even make that choice.
Right. Which I'm sure that's a concept that you have to try and introduce us at first, of like, hey, you may not want to step away from your business to work on this stuff because you want to work on the business. But if you do this routinely, you can actually work on your business more.
Yeah.
And I mean, was that something that you kind of experienced, of like, hey, me stepping away and doing the tax stuff that I used to, I don't want to say avoid, but like, it wasn't the fun, like, I'm not brewing delicious beer.
Yeah.
I mean, was that was that kind of the catalyst to you being able to go out and like, hey, I can now start developing some more business revenue streams or ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. And when Lou was just talking about the coding, before, my P&L was wages and salary.
Right.
And now it is wages and salary, brewery, wages and salary, front of house, wages and salary, back of house. And now I can just take a quick snapshot and look at those labor numbers and then make adjustments from there. Whereas before, I could dig into there, but it would take, looking at QuickBooks, looking at my POS system, looking at some Excel reports, and it's like so many different things I'd have to do to get that number, whereas now I can just look at it.
Right. And it wasn't what you're passionate about. You'd rather be out inventing a new beer to make and do that, which is way more fun, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And when it's easy to find the number, it's also easy to hold other people accountable to it.
Sure.
So that, that's a big part of what we help people do is developing KPIs, and then, hey, let's build, maybe it's a bonus structure, or maybe it's just a team goal. We found it's incredibly effective just to have one of your key numbers up on the wall in the break room. And people, when they have something to rally around, they'll rally around it.
Sure.
But you got to have that for them to be able to do. And
so,
that's part of what we enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for a business owner, you kind of start to know your metrics, and you know your numbers, and you know how profitable you are and things like that. It brings the stress level down, or it might increase it if it's not going well. But it decreases that stress level, because I can go brew for 3 hours and not worry about the next thing that I might need to worry about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or it can, like you say, light a fire under your butt and go figure out other ways, other revenue streams, or other things to do, because you're looking at this or that and it's telling you, wait a minute, this isn't working for you, so let's change the model a little bit.
Sure. So Lou, I know you work with a lot of breweries, in California. Obviously they're not as good as this one, but you work with several different ones. But kind of what are the kind of those, profit margins, and for you, Andy, what do you kind of see, where is it profitable, and, if there was a business that you could cut out or do different, you would. Obviously, it's a whole ecosystem here. But what are kind of some of those metrics?
I think the classic answer for today, and what's difficult, is projecting what's the answer going to be 5 years from now, right?
Right.
But the classic answer right now is that going to distribution is extremely hard. Anything that you're doing that's cutting into your margins.
Okay.
When I say, for people not in the brewing industry, when I say going to distribution, that means you're brewing the beer, you're putting it into some sort of a package, and then you're distributing it out to another retailer.
Gotcha.
And oftentimes there's a middleman in between called the distributor. And, everyone's kind of getting their piece of that. So you have to have a lot of volume to make up for the fact that your margin is a lot thinner.
Gotcha.
Brewing beer here and selling it over the bar, obviously the profit margins are quite a bit higher.
Sure.
But you got to have people coming through the door and things like that. So that's the model we're seeing more and more of today.
Okay.
I think Andy's done a great job of making a community space where people want to come.
Sure.
And they've got the food. They have a full bar too. So there's a lot to going on there, and that model I think is working very well.
And there is something different about seeing the tanks right back there and then drinking it here. I mean, just me personally as the beer,
No, absolutely.
The
And
beer
they've got
the beer snob. Like,
Yeah.
I always look for that in a restaurant. Like, hey, do they have a, whenever I'm traveling, it's like, hey, is there any place that brews beer in house? Because it's just always, to me, it's always better.
They've got the open fermenters. You can see it bubbling away
Yeah.
back there, which is a cool thing here. And
It's that connection, and it's that telling of your story
Absolutely.
that resonates with people, that helps them decide whether or not they want to support you or not.
Yeah.
And for anyone who if you guys want to hear Andy's story, our last podcast did reference like his trip to Germany as when he was 16 and everything. There is a reason why his brewery looks and why the beer he brews tastes the way it does, and it's not just because he took a Twitter survey and that's what the public wanted. It is personal to him. So absolutely check it out if you have the chance.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So kind of what are some, let's kind of talk about employees real quick, because I know that's always a struggle, especially in an employee-intensive business like owning a restaurant. They can obviously make or break you. You never know what an employee is going to say to a customer, and now you have one less advocate for your business. So Andy, kind of have you learn that part of it, because there's no real book on, hey, this is how you handle employees. So how have you kind of done that and tried to make it just a fun place to work, but still obviously profitable and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that is hugely important. One of the when I was writing the business plan and doing some research, and I came across a quote, and I don't know who said it, but it's essentially your most important customer is your employee.
Sure.
And that rings very true, especially in a service-minded business where that's the weak link. I mean, I feel great about the beer, I feel great about the bar, I feel great about the food, but there's that your server that's on the front lines talking to your guests. Yeah. And like you said, that can easily go south. And if you don't have great people that can turn some of their woes, broke up with a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, life's hard. Yeah. If they can't turn that off when they come in here, and I tell them, I said, look, I would rather have you tell me 5 minutes before your shift that you can't make it because you just broke up with your boyfriend, whatever, than come in and give a bad experience to one of my guests. So So that culture, developing that culture is, I will say, is probably one of the most important things you can spend time on, other than the obvious things, looking at your money and your finances. But
so what do you kind of done do that? I mean, do you do weekly or monthly trainings, or is it a constant conversation?
It's a conversation. Yeah, it's a conversation. It is, at least from what my employees are telling me, I'm very involved in the day-to-day operations here. I'm here a lot. So, I'm talking to guests a lot. I'm watching my servers talk to guests. I'm just really involved. And And, the old adage of when the cat's away, the mice come out to play. It's very true, because, we did some secret shopping, had some secret shoppers come in, and over a period of time, and there was a clear difference between when I'm here and present and when I'm not.
Wow.
And that's not to say that I have bad employees working, but there's an effect of having an owner operator present in the business that really motivates and helps the employees do a better job.
Yeah. So kind of, and I'll ask the same question to you, but running a small business is all consuming times 2 probably. It's probably enough for 3 or 4 people work to do as how much the small business owner does. But how do you kind of balance? You said you're married, 2 boys. They're kind of in that, you said 13 and 15, so they're kind of in they're playing lots of sports and activities and all that kind of stuff. But how do you kind of balance some of that? I mean, that's not an easy thing to do.
It's extremely hard. And to be honest, that was one of the catalysts of talking with Lou and just kind of getting better at what we do, so I could try to afford to bring in a manager and take a little bit of time away. Yeah. And right now I'm pretty consistently have my Sundays available to be with my family and kids. But you're right, it is all consuming. It's 24/7. And it kind of has to be, and I knew it would be, at least for the first several years. Yeah. Doing it. And thankfully I'm passionate about it and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But hugely important to be able to try to balance that out. And I feel like I'm learning that more as I go. Yeah. I feel like I'm becoming a better leader, better manager, because I'm able to say no and take some time away from the business here and there. Yeah. But it's,
Isn't it? I do know for myself. I mean, that leadership skill, it's a constant evolution. Plus the people you're leading change, and the generations change, and so the skill sets that you have to have that worked 10 years ago don't work the same way now. Or the motivations change. As the millennials have kind of come into the workplace, and then what are the next generation called? I can't remember.
Gen Z.
Gen Z or whatever. Gen Z. Yeah. But when their motivations are different than the millennials were, and so how do we get them motivated to come to work and show up, and what's important to them, and all that kind of stuff. So It's definitely an evolution and
Yeah.
a challenge, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I know it has been for me.
Yeah.
So kind of, you
Yeah.
work in the CPA space, so I mean,
Sure.
it's a little more professional space, but it's still people are
we have
people
the
are
same,
people,
we have
right?
the same challenges. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. At the end of the day, we're managing our staff, and
Yeah.
same thing. We're both in service industries, very different industries, but at the end of the day, we do something very technical, but we have to take really good care of the people that we're doing it
Absolutely.
for.
Yep.
And that comes down to service. And so, yeah, culture. We work with somebody. One of his favorite sayings is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's
Absolutely.
a very
Yep.
popular saying. I think it's very true.
Yeah.
And I think really for us, the more we can get our people on board with this idea that really what we're doing is taking care of other people. And when you're just staring at the numbers, sometimes, you're behind a computer screen, you forget there's a person behind
Yeah,
it.
it comes
This
a little
stuff is
personal.
really
Yeah.
affecting.
Yeah.
It's just a number on a screen or it's whatever.
Yeah.
And so the more we make it feel like, oh yeah, this is a person, I get the opportunity to take care of them
Right.
and to bring some peace of mind, resolve an issue, whatever it is, just be
Yeah.
an ear for them to talk about their divorce or whatever
Yeah.
it is, goes a long way.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge, and you're absolutely right, and especially with varying motivations for our staff, it's trying to find that balance is tough.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I just know especially here in California, there's enough employment law. I don't know how thick the book is, but it's so just even follow that is its own challenge, and then just to get people to come to work and provide a good service and a high level of what you're trying to do for your clients, it's just a challenge all the way across the board.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and so, I mean, you're, like you just mentioned, you're kind of stretched thin on like, hey, I've got to be a different person. I've got to wear so many different hats. So how often do you and Lou get together and just say, hey, of all the different hats I'm wearing, now I got to wear my accounting hat, which luckily you offload a lot of that to Lou. But how often do you make that like just a routine? Like, nope, I don't care what's going on that day. I've got to talk to Lou and we've got to get this sorted out.
It's we were just joking because his assistant's been trying to get me to set a meeting for
Yeah, when he
about a
calls
month.
us back, it's a pretty
about a month.
You don't
now,
know this, but she's actually waiting outside. You're gonna have that meeting now.
That's what this entire podcast is for.
This is
huge
all
room.
the front.
Yeah.
That's a fake camera.
But yeah, we're trying monthly, every 4 to 6 weeks or so would be good, just to review kind of some month.
Yeah.
And then it's like once everything gets settled and we're cruising, then it's I don't know, maybe quarterly.
It tends to be a lot more as we're making changes or as things are beginning and things like that, but it evolves over time. And there are times when people need a lot more if there's a big transition with somebody helping in a role that's leaving or just things like that, and so we end up stepping it up, and then we can back it off at other times too.
So Andy, this question is for you. What has been the hardest part of the business? I know you said you're very involved, but to kind of that you've given up some control in to somebody else and been like, oh wow, I don't know how this is going to work out, and they either thrived or they didn't, and you had to either step in or watch them crush it or do a good job.
Yeah, I think it's early on it was those times when I wouldn't be here that we'd be open.
Okay.
That I'm sitting there, I'm away. I'm away because I need to be away. I need to be with my family, but
Right.
I'm with my family and they're physically, but mentally,
I'm not.
I'm over here trying to figure out what's going on. But it's just that struggle to, when you're away and be present for your loved ones and your family and your boys. But having there was one point where I did bring on a manager to manage while I was gone, and it just quickly didn't work out. So I found myself back doing as much as I was doing. But that was just, circumstances of just not the right fit for the person. But
Yeah. So are you still, how involved are you in the day-to-day brewing? Do you have your brewmaster and you make recipes? How's that kind of process work?
Yeah, that is very, Brian, who's just an amazing brewer, does 98% of the work, and I'm really just there to bounce ideas and look at recipes and what are we going to brew next. And I'm really trying to, he's got it dialed, and I'm not worried about our beers, so I'm focusing more on our kitchen and kind of food side. And
he's never like Andy, I got it.
Andy calls me for recipes.
Yeah.
Every once in a while. That's good. Yeah. It's outside of my normal engagement. But, we'll do what we can do.
Do you ever give insight on like, hey, we could, you need more write-offs? We should make this really obscure beer. We should buy all this obscure fruit and veggies to,
and
integrate.
Just send it over to my house. It'll be fine. Yeah, we'll write it off.
Yeah. Not that, but we do talk a lot about research and development, and when you're,
There
you
you
know,
go.
when you're coming
There we
in,
go.
there are some tax credits. So we want to incentivize, people to do things that are going to help grow
Sure.
their business and go out there a little bit. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So give us a little, I guess, so a little bit of insight on the R&D side for breweries and restaurants. Like, hey,
Right.
like these are things that you could be doing, or how have you taken that kind of side of the brewing business and been like, hey,
Yeah.
we could take this new beer, and even if it doesn't do well, if we categorize it correctly, or if we keep,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
that
mean,
works.
so-
I'm not a CPA, so
yeah, absolutely. So the research and development is a tax credit. So it's dollar for dollar really against your tax liability. It's available both federally and for the state of California, and pretty much all of our brewers are getting it. Really, what it's intended for is to incentivize businesses
Sure.
to bring something new into the world, into the marketplace.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be a completely new, jet aircraft, but it can be a new process for brewing beer. It can be a new design of something. I don't usually go to the extent of saying, recipe formulation. That's probably not quite enough.
okay.
But there's a lot of other stuff that breweries are constantly doing to try and, try something new and innovative, make them more efficient
Sure.
in terms of their extraction or, fermentation speed or profile or things like that. So all that stuff can kind of go into it. And so the cost you're already spending on labor and materials, really, sometimes some outside contractors as well, can roll into that. So that's what we really like about it is the fact it's already money you're spending. It's already stuff you're doing.
Right.
Now let's go ahead and capture a little bit of that and get the benefit that Congress really has intended
Right.
to incentivize Americans to be, American businesses to be innovative.
And real quick, could you give our listeners just a quick snapshot of what is the difference between going after a tax credit versus just a tax deduction?
No.
Or not, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So a deduction is a reduction in your net income. So
Got it.
when you're calculating tax, you're calculating your taxable income minus your gross income minus the qualified deduction. So your cost of materials, your cost of labor, those sorts of things. And then you get to net income and you multiply that by your tax rate and you get your tax, more or less. A tax credit is we already calculated that. We get your tax liability and we're going to go ahead and reduce your tax liability by whatever the amount of that credit is with some limitations. So dollar for dollar credit's a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
What's also cool about it, if we talk about a deduction, a classic tax planning tool would be go out and buy some more equipment. We can write it off and we're going to get rid of your tax liability. That's great, but you had to go buy the equipment.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to go spend dollars.
You got to go spend the money. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
the tax credit, and that's true with tax credit. There are tax credits where that's true as well. But a lot of these, like the research and development credit, or there are others. The FICA, the tip credit, is another one we make sure that people are taking quite a bit. That's money you've already spent. This
Yeah.
is just saying, hey, this fits into this box that Congress has decided to incentivize people with. So let's go ahead and take that money we've already spent and apply it against our tax bill.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So Lou, where does hard seltzer fall into the R&D credit?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
if we're
We
coming
should
up with
start
the monk,
developing it, and
yeah.
let's go from there. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
all those monks back in the day drinking hard seltzer.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's a very, that's a very a lot of history.
You could call it the
Lot
monk-
of history
you could
there.
call it
There's
the
a lot
monk's
of-
seltzer. See,
There we
a little
go.
play on words
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
We're gonna cut that out.
No, that stays in. That stays.
So though I know, unfortunately, a lot of people see a CPA,
Yeah.
especially I don't know if I like to use the word aggressive when we're talking about CPAs, but a proactive CPA, we'll
Yeah.
go with that.
Yeah.
They're always price shopping, and how do you focus on that value over price, right? I mean, not that because you get huge value when you get good advice, and that's just you pay for good
Right.
advice, and it should be good advice.
Yeah.
It'll be apparent pretty quick if you're not getting the good advice for the value, right?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, if you're not working with somebody who's really being proactive, and that means that they're meeting with you at least once during the tax year, and
At
not
a
just-
minimum, yeah, absolutely.
and
yeah.
that's a very, very that's a low bar. But
yeah.
if you're just sending them your stuff and then they send you a tax return a month later and say, okay, here's what you owe, talk to you in 11
Yeah.
months.
I wouldn't call that a tax preparer. I would
Right,
think, yeah.
exactly. That's not
Yeah.
that's not someone who's partnering with you at all.
Right.
It's really easy. I can't, every situation is different, but it's
Sure.
very easy to make up the cost of whatever the difference is between
Right.
somebody who's just getting the books done and somebody who's sitting down and going over some of this stuff with you. Some of the tax credits that we see, I'd say half of clients aren't taking some of these, and this is
Yeah.
free money. It's on the
Yeah.
table. So
Right.
oftentimes our bill gets covered by that, not always.
Yeah.
But just some of that kind of stuff can really help. And then the second thing is if you've got peace of mind and you know that this is being handled well,
Yeah.
you can, that's kind of like military, you call it a force multiplier, right? Now you
Absolutely.
can go and you can
100%.
do what you're really good at. So
Yeah.
instead of worrying about how do I make sure our tax return is prepared correctly, or how do I make sure the financials are tight, Andy can be here developing the next recipe that's going to, blow up, or, you get what I'm
Sure,
saying.
absolutely.
So
No.
really, you focus on doing what you're really good at. We'll focus on doing what we're really good at, and we'll all do better together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think for you, Andy, that's the point where you're like, I don't have to spend so much time sitting in the back office, messing around with QuickBooks and Excel spreadsheets. I can be out keeping an eye on the kitchen or doing the things that I know are going to make me more money, or at least give me the best opportunity to create more revenue.
Yeah.
Because I'm not just in there doing the day to day.
Yeah, and it's almost twofold in my case, because if I'm working on the business and bringing in more revenues, that's great. But I also know Lou is helping me on the back end get better at what we're doing and being more efficient and increasing our margins. So
Right.
it's like you double it up. And
Yeah.
I only wish that I had gone over to Lou earlier in our business life to do that.
Hey, and everybody can make perfect decisions. So there's only one Lou.
And real quick, because you had mentioned, previously in the podcast, we had mentioned
Right.
the Trump tax codes went
Yeah,
into effect, and a lot
absolutely.
of things changed.
Yeah.
From your point of view,
Mhm.
what, because obviously those,
Yeah.
that Trump tax
It was
code
massive,
is-
massive change.
Yeah,
big
massive
change.
changes.
Absolutely.
At least that's what all the mainstream media told me. So
Yeah.
I didn't go read it.
Right.
But it is also limited. So what
Yeah.
are maybe some things that you went back to your current clients
Mhm.
and informed them on, or new clients where you're saying, hey, these are great opportunities, but these are not here to stay. And what are some things that you're like, you should really think about this before? I mean, because unless they extend, this train's leaving.
Yeah, because a lot of these go away in
Yeah.
2026, correct? Or there's a
Yeah,
lot of provisions.
2025 is the last year.
That's
that
right.
we're-
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think some of it has been made permanent, but some of the biggest changes, at least we can say that is some of the biggest changes that we're addressing with our clients is the Section 199A deduction, or qualified business income. Basically, what happened was one of the big changes in the tax code was the corporate tax rate dropped significantly from all down to 21%. So
Sure.
it was like a 50% drop in the corporate tax rate.
Yeah.
Well, that's not very fair to small and mid-sized business owners who aren't operating as a traditional corporation.
C Corp, yeah.
So C Corp. So what happened was they added this 199A deduction that essentially amounts to 20% of the flow through income from your business. It's just a deduction right off the top of your
Oh, wow.
return. So
Okay,
just as
gotcha.
an illustration, you have a business that's making $100,000 a year, you get a $20,000 deduction right off your tax return
Wow,
on your
okay.
individual taxes. There's some management of that needs to take place to make sure you're taking it, make sure you fit into the limitations, and we want to make sure we're looking at our salaries and wages and things like that to make sure all that stuff's appropriate. So that was a huge change.
Yeah.
Something we're all still interpreting, honestly, because
Sure.
there's some areas where you're not totally sure.
Yeah.
There's also some other stuff that's real exciting with some of the investment stuff. You guys and I have talked about the economic opportunity funds,
Yep.
which are pretty significant for the right taxpayer.
Yeah.
Those are actually they exist now, but they're phasing out.
Sure.
We're also seeing some of the solar credits. They got extended a little bit, but then they're starting to phase out again. So there's a whole variety of things. But what's important is that you're paying attention to it and taking the time throughout the year to structure things to get the best benefit from this.
And as always, go pay for the good advice. Usually good advice pays for itself. I've seen that happen. Usually when I'm the cheap son of a gun, that usually ends up costing me more money in the long run. That's and so go get that good advice and pay for it. It will almost always pay for itself. I'm sure you've seen that before.
Absolutely.
Lou, real quick, what's a tax disaster that you guys have been called? You don't have to use, obviously, please don't use names or anything like that. But what is like something you went in and you're like, wow.
Could you fire me now so I don't have to deal with this?
Yeah. We don't. Yeah.
I mean, what are some of the the big mistakes that people make? Is it just not keeping good books or not doing their taxes for years? And what are some of those big mistakes?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of either people who are either self-prepared or we'll just say underrepresented, meaning they're working with somebody who's just not up to the task of dealing with the complexity they have. A lot of them are self-prepared, honestly, and then you just see really basic what from somebody who does it on a regular basis we'd consider a basic mistake, wrong entity type, stuff not flowing through correctly, and that can either mean that they're way overpaying, could also mean that they're really setting themselves up for an audit where there's likely to be an adjustment, or at a very minimum, it's going to be a long, arduous process to get through that.
Yeah.
So, people, in a lot of industries, brewing is one of them. Honestly, accounting is one of them too. People have a very much, I can do it myself. It's a DIY kind of thing, especially cash flow sometimes is not great, especially in the beginning. So people want to do that on their own. And what we find is they can end up digging a hole that takes a little bit of work to get out of it. And some of the stuff you can't undo. Yeah. So even just basic stuff like entity selection, should you be a C corp or an S corp or an LLC or sole proprietor, that kind of stuff. And that's right out of the gate. You got to make those decisions, and they have big consequences.
And Andy, for you, so you start working with Lou, and he starts handling these things. Now you're maybe you're getting some money back that you weren't before. Things are a little bit more streamlined. And if this answer doesn't go as planned, then we can just cut it. So, but what were some things where you're like, hey, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to implement this as a business owner. Now that I have Lou taking care of X, I'm now going to actually take on Y and maybe push Monk Cellar in this direction, or develop it this way. What was maybe the next big thing that you took on after you paired with Lou?
I think a lot of it is, we talked earlier about kind of the culture and driving that culture and making sure you have a good team. And one of the things that I set out to do in the business plan, but have yet to be able to do, and I'm hoping I can with getting Lou involved, is just, offering the healthcare and some of those more incentives that for my employees, because, I really, I've got a lot of employees that have been with me since before we opened, and, they're just very loyal, and I really want to be in a position to be able to offer them some basic things such as healthcare that would be.
Because it almost kind of becomes like your family. I mean, you're with them. I mean, you're with these people. Yeah. Some of them, 8, 12 hours a day.
I'm with them more than my kids and my wife sometimes.
Right.
So it's So I mean, that's what I'm hoping to be able to focus on a little bit, and bringing on more, working on the business rather than in the business, as we always like to say it. That'll help increase more revenues and be more efficient, and be able to offer things like health insurance. And
that's awesome. So for you, Andy, kind of what's the next beer you're brewing that's going to be super awesome? What's going to be your next big hit? Do you know yet?
He told me before.
Hard seltzer, I heard.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. I think, what do we call it? Monk Seltzer?
Yes. Massive. Yes.
It's going to be huge.
Trademark that, Aaron. Trademark that. You should be doing it on the computer right now. Trademark that.
That's what we are. I am in the process of, Lou talked earlier about the kind of production. I mean, our brewery is only at about 55% capacity. So I'm going to look at doing some packaging. We self-distribute all of our beers, so we don't, worry about going through distributor. That takes a lot of the margins that Lou was talking about. But, if I've got extra capacity, then why not use it? So I was looking at getting a little canner and a bottler and doing some packaging products, and obviously that's going to increase revenues and get the name out there.
Very cool.
Have you, just curious, because I know you say you pour at a lot of charities and stuff, have you entered any of your beers in like a local or statewide or national beer fest or something?
In fact, we put on the California Craft Brewers Association does a summit every year, and just this year we started the California Brewers Cup.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like the GABF for the California Brewers, and in the Crooked Ridge ESB, you got a bronze medal at
nice.
that. So
That's
that was
Congrats.
super exciting.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
then our beer Blanche, the Belgian wheat beer, often does well at the State Fair and other big ones. So.
Very cool. Anything else expansion-wise? Is there anything we can kind of talk about? Anything on the horizon as far as the business plan? Or if you're dreaming a little bit, what does Monk Cellar become in the next 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier.
Not saying that you don't have a great place here. So
no, I think it's the focus right now is this place and making sure it's doing the best that it can. But I would like to open a few more of these in other areas outside of the Sacramento area.
Very cool. They need some Monk Seltzer. No, Cellar.
So for the speed round, real quick, Andy, if Lou was a style of beer, what style would he be?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Saucy.
Hard seltzer. Just kidding.
Effervescent with no substance.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I think I would say Lou would be an English style IPA. So just a little bit more balance to the IPA, not to smack you across the face, hoppy bitterness.
Unless you're late on your taxes,
balanced.
so then he's a little bit more of a sharp IPA. And honest answers only. Does he do all of his meetings here so that he can get free beer, or do you ever meet him elsewhere?
No comment.
Okay, Lou, if you could give a beer a tax-inspired name, what would it be?
Ooh, a tax-inspired name.
It's got to have depreciation in it, doesn't it?
I thought about going that way, but I think we're going to have to go liquid assets.
Oh, I like that. That's better than Monk Seltzer.
I think anything
probably been
is
used
better
about
than
100
Monk
times.
Seltzer. Liquid assets. No, I love it. And have you ever put on some rubber boots, grabbed a mash paddle, and gone back there and helped make beer? Or are you strictly on the book side?
I haven't ever done that here, but I have done it elsewhere.
Okay.
And I you know, part of how I got into the industry is I brewed quite a bit of beer at home for a while. So yeah, I think knowing the process and just kind of how the sausage is made, as it were,
Sure.
totally helps with what we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Andy, you should get me here for some free labor. Yeah.
I got a shovel.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I mean, if people are listening to this and thinking, hey, I should, the tax credits or some of that, more complex planning, I should look into that. Where can people go and just find you directly?
Yeah, you come to our website, muncpas.com, MUNCPAS.com, or even they're welcome to email me directly, lpc@muncpas.com.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
And if you contact Josh or I mean, we're happy to point you in the right direction.
We will get you in contact with Lou.
Yeah.
No problem.
We'll schedule a meeting at MUN Cellar. And
Yeah.
just hope that free beer.
Just come on down. You'll find me here.
Yeah. Lou's second office.
Yeah.
Does Chris know that?
Sure.
Yeah. Awesome. So Andy, how can everybody, where can they find you guys obviously on the web, and then how can they get a hold of you, and obviously where are you guys located here in Roseville?
Yeah, we're here downtown Roseville, 240 Vernon Street, monkcellar.com, Andy@monkcellar.com.
Perfect.
Yeah. And for any of the Bay Area listeners, you drive past this place as you're heading up to Tahoe. If you're looking for a quick break,
Swing
It's
on
like,
through.
it's like a mile and a half off the freeway.
Just off
Yeah,
80.
just off 80. So
Absolutely.
Some Reuben fries, some delicious beer. You're good to go. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, perfect. Any closing thoughts, Andy, for you? Always thank you so much for taking your time to be on the show. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I've already said it, but early on, spend the time and the money, get a good CPA. It'll
perfect.
make all the difference
Good.
in the world.
Lou, anything for you?
No, really appreciate you guys having us on today. It was,
Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun. I'm going to go grab some fries and a beer.
thanks everyone again for joining the Wealth Preservation Podcast. We're just so happy that we're able to be here with Andy and Lou. Again, if you want to come down to MUN Cellar in Roseville, great establishment, and if you want to contact Lou, we're going to have the information posted at the end of this podcast.
Make sure you check out our podcast, wealthpreservationpodcast.com. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and also these videos will be up on YouTube. So make sure and check us out. I think you'll like what you see. And hit us up on questions on Twitter. We'll be on Twitter also, so you can hit us up with questions there.
Quick disclaimer, nothing we say is tax, legal, or financial advice. So absolutely go seek, if you think any of these things pertain to you, don't take this podcast as gospel. Go seek professional opinions and the advisors that you have to support you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.